NH here. Welcome back to the iHealth channel and iHealth Radio. We're back with the Gherasim Hour and the man and the one and the only, Gabriel Gherasim. How are you?
Hello, nice to speak with you again and to broadcast with you. Hopefully, we can again be able to provide some food for thought, if you will, uh, and and useful.
Well, so far it's been good.
Yes,
Uh, we've had a lot of good feedback and certainly a lot of powerful messages and content, I would believe. And hopefully people have taken advantage of some of it, if not all of it. And I'm sure other will probably follow suit eventually. So today's topic is people and us, right? People
absolutely,
and us. Weird, right? Sounds like, what kind of topic is that? People and us. So let's break that down. Sounds deep.
absolutely. So we established that a human being is formed by two kinds of creation. One is the human in us is materially based, right? Cells, bones, and so forth, and it's perishable. And the other kind of quote unquote ingredient in a human being is the being in us, namely the electromagnetic field, which allows us to be a alive and be conscious. As such, individuals who are conscious need a purpose in life, need meaning. An individual without meaning is really devoid of knowledge. And the whole idea of consciousness, the word conscience means with science or with the science of. So if I am in the knowledge or within the science of being able to distinguish essentially between good and evil, then I certainly need to choose a camp, don't I, Hurricane?
Well, you do. We all have to do that, right? Eventually, we got to pick a side, and maybe or no sides for that matter. But so Gabriel, I want to go back to the title of today's topic, and yeah, we certainly can go. I mean, people and us. I mean, certainly you said we're social animals, as people may refer to humans, and we do live in society. I mean, you can't. We know of real cases when people are in a long term by themselves, they can have some real mental issues if they don't have anybody to really interact with. I mean, we've seen that in movies, we've seen that in reality, and we've seen that in real life, of course. And there are studies about that. So people can be interesting, to say the least, right? We all are interesting characters, and
Yes.
I don't think anyone would disagree with us, right? you know, good, bad. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Everybody's interested in their own way. Um, but you're right. There is the people, and we are part of the people, right? And but how we interact. So I have this philosophy personally that I think that we're in this world, and I always refer to it as this big theater, and we have different characters that will come on that stage and have their own function or their own, I guess, cues. They have a role to play, and they interact with each other within that theater, and then the play is over. Thus, the end of life. So, what do you say to that?
Absolutely. So let's start with display of our lives. Uh, we are born, and who are the first adults that we are exposed to hurricane?
Well, I'm
A
assuming parents.
parents. So this is a very important thing to establish, namely the meaning, the importance, the vitality of a mother and a father. Because for a baby and then later on the child, the mother represents literally and figuratively the nourisher. She is the one who feeds, she is the one who comforts, and the word comfort means comfort within the strength of whatever one's reality is. The father, if the mother is the nourisher, the father is the protector. So if I want to protect something, the word protector comes from, again, Latin, and simply means to cover something over. So where do we protect things mostly, um, Hurricane? In the home or outside the home? Which things do we cover most likely?
Well, I mean, parenthood is not simple, right? I mean, I would say it starts in the home, but it continues outside of the home. I mean, we can't just let our kids go out there. I mean, especially for those folks that may have kids, they will probably relate to this. I mean, if you're parents, you always care for your kids. When they leave the home, you're kind of worried until the minute they come back. And then also, I mean, you want to protect them against society and what other influences that may be out there. And we see that all the time. There's good influence, bad influence. Our kids learn things from a variety of folks. I mean, it's amazing though. That's old school. I mean, in a way, that's been the tradition over the centuries where kids are with you and they go to nature. I mean, back in the days, I mean, before technology, they used to hunt, they used to do things, then they used to go play. Even our generation, I think, at least I can speak for myself. I mean, we grew up in the street a little bit, having fun, playing with, real game, ball, things like that. And, we probably had the first, game consoles at the time, So we did a lot of outdoor activities, and I know my parents, they were always freaking out when I'm out there because they don't know until you walk in. They check you out. Everything's good. All right, I'm happy. Yes, okay. I remember one time actually I got hurt. I came back home with a boo boo, as they call it, and that was not a fun moment, in the house. But I think the protection here is beyond just physical. I mean, it's you protect them for everything. I mean,
Exactly.
physically, mentally, emotionally.
You got it. So it's the protection, the visible and the invisible protection of the child. And that is created in order to have and maintain a balance in one's life, right? So the word balance comes from our friend, the Latin language, and it literally means there be meaning two, and lungs meaning a scale, like the justice, Lady Justice's scale. If it's tilting one way or another, hopefully in a fair balancing of justice. So the same thing goes with, like you said, mental, emotional, and physical values and states of being. This balance is needed. And for that, the mother, the nourisher, the one who comforts, has to have as the balancing factor the father, the protector, the ones who protects the individual, covers him or her over, and that is in order to dare the young individual to go outside the comfort level. And this is very interesting because in such a balanced environment, the mother nourishes the strength from a comforting level, and the father protects and quote unquote nourishes the strength to push the individual outside the comfort zone and progress. This is a very important thing. This is manifested a lot in our hormonal level and the derivating physiological and later on action-based activities of the individual. Have you heard about oxytocin? Oxytocin. The oxytocin is called also the love hormone.
Hmm.
Why is that the case? Because this hormone, which was discovered in the 1950s, is coined from the Greek term oxys, meaning sharp or swift, and tokos, meaning childbirth. So essentially, this hormone refers to the childbirth in a sharp way of the individual. This is so powerful, Hurricane, because this hormone is in charge to facilitate the birth and to stimulate the milk release in the mother. It's phenomenally important. For others, this hormone, which is created or triggered by love, um, is a trust inducing, has a trust inducing property. This oxytocin may help those with social anxiety and depressions, anxiety, fear, social dysfunctions, generalized anxiety disorder, post traumatic stress disorder. The list goes on and on. And so it can be actually administered medically to alleviate the very same illnesses that I had mentioned before. And that usually happens in families that were dysfunctional or single or kids in the orphanages. And because they did not have the mother's love,
Mhm.
their little bodies and neurons did not process enough oxytocin. And as such, they need the artificial or the synthetic version of it. Isn't that interesting?
I it's news to me. I mean, I know the relationship with the motherhood and all that, but I mean, to break it down into hormonal, levels and how the impact is, I mean, that is pretty not only interesting, that's pretty deep stuff, and it's the next level, and I mean, but you can see that. I mean, there is. I mean, definitely there's that closeness. I mean, um, in the old tradition, I mean, milking or like having like breastfeeding children, right? That is kind of like that was, and even today there's so many mothers that pick and choose that is a connection. And again, it may not be as related, but I think there is a very good relationship with that in terms of, especially when you do it over 2 years or a period of time, which is usually 2 years. I think that connection is, there is nothing like it. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, unfortunately, like, today, I mean, there's a lot of formula babies, so there's maybe a disconnect in that level. And again, I mean, we're talking about just pure physical, transmission of such, hormones and such things, body to body. But I think there is I'm assuming that there is a real connection between the two. Um,
Yeah. Or in fact, love is triggering oxytocin. Love is triggering the creation of this. You mentioned the kids very correctly. I must give you credit. I can see that you are a parent. You mentioned the children until age 2. Let me mention why this oxytocin is so powerful, and if this is in not enough existence because of not enough love being given, the maternal kind of love given to these children, what's the side effect of that? So children until age 2 have 2 times more the amount of neurons that adults, including therefore and the receptors of the synapses of the brain, than adults have. So you can imagine the potential benefits of love within this first 2 years of one's life. If not enough love is given, then there is a high infusion of cortisol and adrenaline, which then create a situation for the rest of the life of the individual, and it affects the correlation of this individual to himself or herself and the rest of the people. The first toxic hormone that comes because of lack of love, which, by the way, if one doesn't have love, one will have fear. Fear will generate anger and or sadness and or depression. So at that point, up to age 2 and or later, if not enough oxytocin creating love is there, then these two hormones called depression hormones are going to take place and be produced in inordinate amounts of time, of quantity rather. The first one is the cortisol. Now you also do martial arts, so when I'm talking about these hormones, you can correlate them to the exercises that are triggering certain hormonal levels in the individual one way or another. So the cortisol, one of the two depression hormones, in excess blocks the rebuilding of the nerves. So imagine a baby up to age 2 and or later not only does not have enough oxytocin, but in fact it has a high influx of cortisol. And up to age 2, when he or she has twice the amount of the uh, neurons, instead of being having these neurons imbibed with oxytocin, has cortisol, number one. The cortisol blocks the rebuilding of the nerves, which obviously reduces the nerves in the little baby. The second, the second depression hormone is adrenaline. Now, in excess, in again, adrenaline, just like cortisol, is triggered, is created by fear, anger, depression, anxiety, and the adrenaline. What it does, it constricts the circulation, sometimes without spasticity in the body, which in terms reduces the oxygen levels and affects the heart, the muscles, and the blood. So now you tell me what kind of future, brilliant future, is a little baby prepared to have internally if psychologically there is not enough love, which reduces the love hormone, oxytocin, and increases the stress hormones of cortisol and adrenaline. It is a setup for a very hard uphill battle for the baby. Now, what happened to the baby when it becomes a little child before age 7? So children up to age 6 are modeling the outside role models. About 98% of children are modeling the outside roles from a subconscious perspective. They don't understand very well the why behind the what. They just know and see the what, and for better or worse, they are going to model that. Now, if we model something long enough, it creates a reflex,
Yeah.
right? What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I mean, like again, we say muscle memory, right? You see it, you do it, and it just becomes just a routine, and you do it, and you don't even think about it because that's what you know. You don't know anything better.
Exactly.
And you're right. I mean, if these folks or the children, and we've seen that. I mean, we talked about there's the topic of hate and racism and things like that. For example, especially in these days, what's going on with the Asian community. Uh, you know, you would think that some people have learned some of these things when they're younger, and yet a child, without having any influence, will not see the difference in humans. The all children are children. They don't see color. They don't see background, ethnicity, all that. But if they are exposed enough, I think to one element of those things in the long term, or hear things, that's how they grow up to be. And it's hard to change that mentality eventually. But you're right. I mean, you're building the building blocks literally at those young ages, and so whatever you instill in them, that's what's going to be. It's like you basically just injected, good, bad, or otherwise, right at that, early on. And to your point, if they don't have the love, they don't have the hormonal balance that they need, and they get the opposite with the fear factor, and with the cortisol,
Exactly, the fear factor.
then that's
And
all
you,
there is.
yeah, and you're right. Again, the beginning is not in the hormones. The beginnings are at the electromagnetic sentiments or feelings being given to these children. Are they loved? Are they neglected? Are they hurt?
Mhm.
So, unless they are loved, the other two are going to lead the individual into the constrictive aspect of his endocrinological really imbalance. And so, what should be, like you said, building blocks actually turn into just
Destructive,
blocks,
or
obstacles,
destructive ones.
destructive ones. We see that in with a lot of children in orphanages. We see that in children who come from very dysfunctional families. It is such a responsibility to raise a child, um, and the credit should go to both parents who are able to provide that nourishing from the mom particularly and protective from the dad particularly aspects through love from both of them, that it just makes one never underestimate the beauty of having decent and loving parents who consistently provide that sort of love and protection.
Well, I mean, you mentioned earlier about the Lady Justice and the balance, right? And it's amazing. I mean, that today's society. I mean, there's a lot of debate on, does it matter if if a person is single, whether it's a male or female, father, mother. There's a lot of single folks, divorce and stuff. But if you look back in history, that was not the case. I mean, even more recent years, you had families or families, husbands and wives, and they lived, until the end. Good, bad relationship. They go through their turmoils. We made the joke about the Love and Marriage, show on a cruise. You know, about the couples that are the oldest. Usually are the ones who win because they've endured everything together, but they stayed together. And some families, even if they don't disagree, they disagree, don't even want to be with each other. They do it just for the sake of the kids, to maintain that closeness and to be like really tight with the kids and keep them almost sheltered from any disruption. Now, the issue, I mean, I think there is the reason there is a father and a mother is like, to your point, each one has a function, and the minute that is actually kind of crooked or destroyed or disrupted, there's going to be some miss somewhere, and that miss can be ultimately seen in the behavior, not maybe early on, maybe even later on, and there's certainly some sort of psychological damage or some impact that will take place and certainly will have an effect. And so some people may disagree with this opinion, but and say because there are good examples of people that have been able to give and provide all the care and balance, but certainly it depends of other things, and you don't know until something happens. Oh well, that's what it is. Because to your point, another thing that we've seen, and this is in society, and at least I've seen it, long enough around in the communities, uh, when you have people that let's say single folks, right, with children, their children may not want to be married later on or have even a relationship because, well, they have a relationship, but they will not be, I don't need to be married. It didn't work out well for my parents. Why should I experience it? And then becomes now almost redundant in the society, and now the ripple effect, may not be seen immediately, but then we wonder sometimes. Today we have violence, we have crazy stuff going on all the time, lack of respect, and so on and so forth. Values that are actually diminished. But when you think about it, and some folks that are more conservative will probably maybe agree. Some more liberal may not agree. But these are just the facts I'm stating. I'm not giving an opinion here. But the fact of the matter is, you know, the two sides, can debate about it, but at the end of the day, the core of it is that you have a father, you have a mother, you have a balance, and so it's supposed to be working equally. And then you have the elements outside of those two, which is basically your teachers, your environment, your society, your community, all these other, I guess, influences, and or just inputs that you get. Because I mean, I tend to believe that we're like almost a computer, right? We get a lot of we're the hardware where there's a lot of software uploaded, every day, and that becomes your basically system. What your core is working with. So
Yes, and um, to to confirm what you are saying, can somebody else provide the love needed for the children? Yes, of course, because like I said, the cause here is not an individual or a hormone per se. What induces the love hormones, the hormone, or the opposite, the destructive ones, is the electromagnetic field of love, if it's there. So it can be, as per what you said, um, another person, a non-blood related individual, a loving teacher, a loving worker in an orphanage. In fact, very often orphanage professionals end up adopting children from the orphanage out of love. And so it's the energy of love, consistent, mind you, not intermittent. And because it's consistent, it is best happening in a mother father day and night sort of attendance to the children's needs, although a stranger may also do that, including an adoptive parent brilliantly. So what I'm talking about here, and what we are talking about here, is the fact that love from the very initial stages of the baby's lives is phenomenally important. Like you said, primarily in the two first years of his or her life, for reasons we discussed, and even all the way up to age 13, when the subconscious in the individual leaves way to the conscious part in the individual. So now that's why we talk about the adolescent years, right? 13, now the individual becomes a teenager. So at this point, the individual starts acting and discovering his or her conscious rationale behind his or her and or others' actions, and intentions and words. So he or she starts exploring his or her reality from the conscious level. Until then, it is mostly subconscious based, which means it is mostly related to role modeling. And like you said, if it is from a healthy, loving framework of reference, the individual then, when he or she becomes more prone to use his or her consciousness, will have a healthy mirror, soundboard, or frame of reference. If not, he or she can still, now that the conscious part becomes more and more prevalent in his or her life, bypass that, whether it be by a constant effort to improve himself or herself. We are talking the 40% perception, whether it be because of positive outside factors, good people, places, and things and actions, the 10% aspect of the individual, and or because of sheer genetics hurricane, because the 50% remaining genetics are so resilient in nature that the young adult is beautifully lit from inside simply because of genetic predisposition and or a combination of them. What do you think?
Listen, I mean, I can see that, and um, you just hit on an item here, which is the concept of it could still work, you know, because of genetics and the influence of stuff. And yes, I mean, I still believe that, you know, a good percentage of society, regardless of whether families, you know, separate, things like that, as long, and even sometimes at early on, the kids have an alternative family, you know, if you want to call it that way, or, you know, it could happen also when parents, you know, pass on early on, you know, when the kids are still young. You know, we've seen uncles, family members that take over, even friends that take over, you know, and they do right by those kids. Orphanages that can take, you know, good care, you know, at least individuals, not all. I mean, I think there's always some people that will be highlighting themselves to be better humans, and do the right thing and really give the true love and not just do the job. I think overall there is always an opportunity for kids, and to your point, when they get to that teenage level, where they actually start seeing things themselves now, uh, it's a 50-50 shot. I mean, they can go one way or the other. If they tap into the good stuff and have eventually a good environment that can guide them, they'll turn out well. And I think if they find the wrong influence, then they blame the whole world for everything, and then they just, you know, go on doing, you know, all the bad things that they can ultimately regret over life. So
Yeah, yeah. So therefore, what I was saying earlier is that people need purpose in life. If I don't have a purpose, if I don't, to quote John Cash's song, walk the line, if I don't walk the line of my purpose, of my meaningfulness in life, then I'm going to get distracted, right? Because I'm like a leaf in the water as opposed to being like a ship in the water. I have no direction based consistency, and therefore I'm not in control of my life. I simply give it up to variables in my life. So that's something to understand, and that comes again from a balanced, loving, and protective based environment in the child's home, if which helps the individual to have a positive purpose in life. Now, the other question is, you are mentioning the parents who stay for the sake of the kids in matrimony, right? Question is, do they stay for the sake of the kids out of love for the kids, or do they stay for the sake of the kids out of fear of society, of being thought badly, because the rationale behind it can make or break the degree of assistance and the kind of assistance the parents would give to the children, right? If I do anything out of fear and or obligation, I'm going to resent the living day out of it, and it's going to come either consciously or subconsciously in what I say or do or not do. Am I not? That's why paradoxically some of the parents who separate while maintaining the education of the kids, even alternatively, but they do it out of love, they have most likely more success in providing this love-based nourishment and or protection than the ones who are trying their best to do it out of fear, which invariably is going to mess up things in the sense that the parents will resent the kids and or their lives, and something at some level at some point they are going to implode or explode with devastating circumstances. What do you think?
Well, actually, I think it's a great point, I mean, you really are covering an angle that when I made my statement earlier, I didn't really take it from that the corner of like understanding the dynamics, or at least the variations that may happen just because you stay within a relationship. If you do it for the wrong reasons, to your point, there will be reaction, and that reaction can be adversely affecting the children because you're always gonna like, and you can bring it up to the kids. We've seen, I mean, this is not very common. Well, people, well, I just stayed for the sake of you. You the reason why I'm not happy. Blah blah blah. And now the kids are listening to this conversation, like they blame themselves why their parents were not happy, and so now it's like to your point, they just the thing that they wanted to stay away from, they just actually manifested it faster, you know. And therefore the result is the same. The children still are getting impacted with this particular behavior, and therefore it's still in their conscious and then ultimately or subconscious and ultimately reflected in their life. And so and again, I mean, listen, we have the real cases, case studies out there. There's a lot of documentaries about this thing as well. We see it also in the fiction world. I mean, the movies and stuff, but depicting real true events and what really triggered these events. And a lot of it is again dysfunctional relationships, parents not getting along, so on and so forth, doing it for the wrong, like you said. It all starts with love and the chemistry and keeping it tight. And I think me personally, as a parent, as a father, one of the things that you always want is you want the best for your kids. You mentioned purpose, is that you want to at least guide them until they're ready on their own and they can take it from there. And you try to protect them from any other elements, and you always like try to be on top. Now you try, you do your best. I mean, we're not perfect. Sometimes we all have our deficiencies, I would call them, you know. But as long as the kids get to a point where they understand why you're doing it, like for me, I would say my parents, were there for me, regardless of their relationship, whatever the case may be. They were there. They try to do their best to provide me with education, with the right, environment, so on and so forth, to get me to a certain point of not freedom, but where I can actually sail on my own, like a safety zone, and then after
Yes.
that, it's on you. The decision you make are always going to be yours. And
Yes.
so you can sink or swim, but then at that point, their duty is done, and their function in society has been, implemented.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what happens if there is a denial of this electromagnetic field, which is then creating and the creator of the love hormone and everything else in the body that's good for us? Um, in the last century, we had a school of thought called the behaviorists. The behaviorists claim that feelings have nothing to do with the rest of the body. And to prove the point, in the United States, some individuals decided to isolate children from being loved, held, comforted, uh, and guess what happened to those babies?
They,
They died, and or they were in such a um, decaying state of emotional and mental and physical uh, um, um,
Health.
imbalance that they really uh, couldn't really survive without being, for the rest of their lives, heavily traumatized. So this individual in America actually isolated children from being touched, loved the moment they were born, and they died for the most part. In Europe, certain schools decided, let's do the same thing, whether it be with our enemies, such as the Nazi camps, or whether it is in the schools, such as in the Nazi military schools. And guess what that led to? Genocide. In Asia, and I'm including the Russians in Asia because, well, look at the map. And in Russia, we had the Pavlovian effect, which started on the dogs in terms of conditional reflexes, and then it was moved into people. And then we had what? Genocides. We had re-education in the most negative sense of the word. We had essentially murder. So where there is not love, there is fear. Fear begets hatred. Hatred begets criminal actions. So the behaviorists had this very simplistic formula, Hurricane. They said we can provide a diagram of the human behavior in an ABC model. The A means antecedent, right? Something that happens before the behavior. The B obviously stands for behavior, and the C stands for consequence. So we can assure you that if we want a certain consequence in the individual, by providing the proper antecedent, such as beating somebody into submission, the behavior will come, and thus the consequence would be that they are not going to challenge us. Um, that school of thought really fell apart when, uh, from Jung and on, various and at the scientific level, the quantum physicians, they found out that the model is not quite as simple. Yes, there is an antecedent. However, between the antecedent and the behavior, there is one's interpretation or perception of that event.
Hmm.
So let's say somebody who's kept in prison by the communists or Nazis or whomever you want, uh, the idea is you keep them in prison, you break them. However, if the individual is highly spiritualized by that experience, he's going to come up even a more stern opposer to the system than he or she got in. So now the behavior is not exactly the one that was hoped for by the behaviorist approach to it. Um, and so therefore, again, coming back to the initial uh, point that I was making is that human beings have to have a meaning. They are raised and they create this meaning. If their meaning is based on morality, their perception of the world is going to be done out of kindness, love, respect, resilience. And before the world and their actions and their perceptions stands the hormonal change, right?
Hmm.
That comes from the feelings and or the upbringings that they had. And then of course before that were the experiences that we spoke about. So everything is interconnected. That's why the expression says, show me a way to life and I'll build you a shrine. That's how important this showing is, isn't it?
Well, I mean, again, talk building blocks. I mean, it's really the source, right? I mean, an analogy would be talking about building blocks. You build a castle, of wood, and a foundation of paper or plastic. Eventually, the weight will crumble down, and you build it correctly. The building is going to have a sound structure, and it's going to stand, the times, and that's really, I mean, I think that's the analogy that makes sense there. But really, it's all about your upbringing, as we call it.
Yes.
Your first impact, and your first environment is going to dictate how. I mean, it's funny because I again, I you and I we talked about this. I watch a lot of war movies and strategy movies, as well as like sport movies and things like that, and disasters. And you talk about like decision making because I use those in terms of training and things like that. But when you look at it, you've seen in even in martial arts actually. It's funny because um, there are a lot of martial arts stories about like in the ninjutsu world or the ninja clans that they actually used to pick up orphan kids and then they subject them and train them and control them to become assassins from the get-go. And so all they know is fighting, and everybody's conspiracy. Everybody is an enemy, and all you do, you are bringing literally super soldiers to just go and do damage. We've seen it even in fiction movies again, which depicts the same story. But the reality of things, it can happen if you condition folks enough at an early on point. You will get that behavior. Even in our own behavior. I mean, like for example, again, relate to the martial arts. I started young. It stays with you. So some of the discipline that you've learned then, it's not going to go. Doesn't matter if I stop working out or training today, it's not going away. Those principles are with me, and they will apply until I go. And it goes for a lot of things. If you were conditioned to math or to computers, I mean, our kids today, they know more than the adults when it comes to technology because they are into it so early on. Maybe not now, but if you think about 10 years, 15 years ago, when technology was just kind of like, thriving and a lot of the stuff moving fast, the children were able to actually adapt because they were into it younger. My kids started having their pads and iPads, whatever, at the age of 5. I haven't seen an iPad until I was like 30. Before it was books and that's it, comic books, and and that was fun, right? So again, the level of conditioning that they have varies over time and based on what you have in terms of your entourage and what you've been conditioned to. So that's what's going to make the future. To your point, that's what's going to deliver the shrine. And
Exactly.
we have a saying, similar saying about show me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you will be.
Yes, yes, exactly. So, exactly. Um, it's very important to understand the damage that theories based on conflict, which is conflict means one, what I'm separated from you. And why should I be separated from you? Either because I'm indifferent or I hate you or I'm afraid of you. Indifference, hatred, or fear. That's what separates individuals from each other. So there were many theories of conflict, and it led to horrendous results in society. Let's start with biology, right? We have the theory of Darwin, right? The survival of the fittest, evolutionism. Well, again, here the aspect of love, of care, of charity was never brought in. And while Darwin may have been right in terms of the reptilian animal kingdom, where indeed there is no empathy, he conveniently failed to explain why, if you have a herd of elephants, the males, the strongest ones, would be surrounding from the outside the weaker ones. Really, if it had been a situation of the survival of the fittest, the babies would have been gone because the male elephants would have stayed in the center, right? And let the weaker ones outside instead of exposing themselves to the risk to protect them, right? So in the mammalian kingdom, we see a lot this aspect of just like with the human beings, where the father, the males are in the protective mode, which means sacrifice to the one's life if need be for protecting the weaker ones, whereas the females are in the nutritional and nourishing and loving aspect of it, if you will. In psychology, and by the way, Darwin's survival of the fittest, the evolution is just a theory, just to be clear.
Well, I wanted to interject in that just because I've studied a lot of on the Darwinism a little, well, not a lot, but enough to understand it. When I did some religious studies, and one of the things about, I mean, he had actually, I think, in a statement he did say that, my theory could be proven wrong, and actually there are a lot of holes in it eventually that were depicted later on, where even to your point, even in the jungle, yes, there might not be empathy, but animals, you can find a lion with a gazelle. As long as they're not hungry, and they can still coexist. They only hunt to eat, so it's this that's the nature piece. But they're not going there to just attack people. See, humans do that. We can attack each other for no reason. Animals don't do that.
Exactly.
If it's not territory and if it's not for survival, like food and stuff, they would not do it. Or to protect the little guys. But
Exactly.
it is crazy because again, to your point, it was a theory that was built on certain and multiple elements that at the time were supposed to be facts, or at least they were easy to accept. With more science, more and by the way, it was never accepted in the religious world, which was still the predominant environment between all the main monotheistic religions. That's always been Darwinism didn't stand a chance, because everybody's still believing in the creation and so on and so forth. But certainly those elements were had enough acceptance in some I guess communities. But even with that, it immediately got almost destroyed, with science and all the good, scientific facts that came on in the next century, So
Yeah. So imagine what happened. The biology of Darwin's survival of the fittest was taken into Aryan races. Even in the States, the white men decimating the natives and or anybody else, blacks as slaves, and the Mexicans as kicking them out, at least certainly taking the property and the territory over in the West and so forth. So that's where the biology aspect of this conflictual theory, survival of the fittest, with no empathy and love being a determinant in the progress of these societies, particularly the human beings, led to. In psychology, another conflict-based theory, no love, Freud's Oedipal complex, right? What's Freud's Oedipal complex? The son who kills the father. The son who kills the father. Where is the love? There is no love there. In sociology, we have Marx's abolition of the family right out. The idea of class struggle, not based on individual merits and needs, but class, which means now you can go and kill millions of people who are from the quote unquote wrong class. And of course, the continuous revolution, right? So what does revolution means is to turn the reality upside down, to revolve it, revolution, like a revolver. And here is the antidote to that. What's the secret of life? The secret of life uh, has this uh, 3 points. How can one get unorganic or inorganic matter, which is dead, into organic matter, which is alive? Right? This came from a Romanian doctor who published a book right under the nose of communists, and it created just about a whole series of arrests. He escaped barely from being arrested and put in prison because it raised the consciousness of the people in Romania in the 1980s. And he wrote a book. His name is Professor Constantin Dulcan, a neurologist and endocrinologist and very spiritual person. And he wrote this book in a communist country called The Intelligence of the Matter. And he explained it quite scientifically. In order for anorganic or inorganic energy, dead matter, to become an organic energy of life, there needs to be a catalyst, which could be both an organizing factor and also coordinating capabilities. In other words, we need an intelligent creator who would be able to both organize and coordinate the capabilities of creating life. And this intelligent creator may be called by many names. And without somebody organizing and coordinating life, there is no way that dead matter can become alive. And so obviously this intelligence uh, factor has to be loving because it creates as opposed to destroying. And thus the idea that love not only can create one individual's beautiful life and hormonal balance and goals and experience of pleasant life in his or her lifetime, it is actually the secret of the universe creating life. Isn't that interesting?
Well, I mean, that's I love that topic actually. We could do a whole session just for that one. And I mean, really, now you're touching into like the creation and the universe, and even we can go to Big Bang theory and the intelligent design concept, and which this ties right into it. I mean, it's amazing because when in the Big Bang theory, I mean, the universe exploded. But in essence, an explosion is destructive. The Big Bang did not explode. I mean, it's designed to actually get exactly everything in the right in space and time, and that's thus you have the orbits, you have the galaxies, and everything moving in harmony. And so there's so much stuff about that topic that we can debate. I mean, we'll get into like physics now, and even religion and science combined here because there's so much. And you and I, we had some sidebar conversation about those topics, but it's pretty cool stuff because to your point, one of the like one time I had a discussion, and so it was an argument about creator, no creator, all that stuff, which is very typical these days. Some people say, well, prove it. Well, I don't have to prove it. Let's take a bunch of rubble, materials, so metal, rubber, pick all kind of different materials, put them in a big pile, and let it be a computer, functional computer. Let it be a plane that is able to fly. Can it happen? The rubble will be there, and
Uh,
it would never work unless somebody takes those parts and put them into a machine and creates the machine and the software to do it. Not gonna happen.
exactly. So the organizing aspect of it plus the coordinating capabilities, because one may be organized and coordinated in every single way possible except technological in this case. So this intelligent entity capable of creating life by organizing and coordinating all the electromagnetic aspect, the force of life, to infuse the matter where now life happens. And in the case of human beings, it's life based on consciousness, has to be there. We micro manage and micro replicate this in creating anything from a bicycle to a skyscraper, and we don't understand that the same effect is happening at the planetary level. That's the interesting aspect of it, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I think the reason we don't reflect on it is because we don't reflect enough. We don't think about it because it's just there. But any person can just literally walk out from their home and just take a look at the sky, go to the shore and look at the sea and start questioning how is it that the sea is not overwhelming the earth, the land. How is it that the stars are not falling on our head? Most of the stars we look at right now, they don't even exist any longer. I mean, their light has been so taking traveling so long that they might have disappeared or moved from that position. But yet we just got it. I mean, there's so much stuff about that world that most of us we're just are heedless about it. We just don't care to learn or to even interact with. But you're right. I mean, it's very simple. We create, we invent. But our concept inventing is really, I mean, a computer is the best example. I mean, we have software, hardware, right? We have, energy that goes into it. All the stuff makes what we are looking at and what we're using as a computer. But there's a processor. There's also so we can talk about those are the organs. We talk about the software as the actual input, and then we can talk about the electricity as your energy. But at the end of the day, you and I we had this discussion the other day about this universe is all made of electrical wavelength wave type of energy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about quarks, which is like one of the smallest elements in the universe, and everything is made out of quarks. So now what's the difference between you, me, the star, the sand, and the water? And we're all made of molecules and atoms and electrons, protons, and stuff. And then there's physics that says that matter is solid, yet all the physics also leads back to one concept that is 90% empty. And now we're talking about like whoa, hold on, these guys are crazy on this show.
No, because it's not empty, it's invisible. And that's the big difference because what we call empty is actually electricity, electromagnetic consciousness. In fact, Nikola Tesla reported that life in universe is based on three aspects, Hurricane. First one, vibration. Second one, energy. And third one, frequency. So vibration, energy, and frequency, they are all electromagnetically related. There is no what iota of matter as part of the secret of universe. It is from the energy of creating, and by creating it becomes loving, and it is intelligent on account of the organizing and coordinating capabilities, which obviously leads to the creator being an intelligent entity, that we are around and the universe is around. um, and learning to live out of joy and love, which is the whole idea of creating, this is health, this is living at ease. The opposite, when one learns from living out of fear and anger and sadness and depression, this is dis-ease, or not being at ease. So the lesson is right there. It starts from our intelligent tension or intention and what we practice. That frequency, you and I mentioned about the AM, FM frequency. Which frequency am I going to be on? Because based on that, everything material and behavioral and endocrinological in me is going to take you from that angle one way or another.
Well, it's funny because we're coming back to the end of this hour, but I'm reflecting on some of the discussions we had, and we talked about frequency, we talked about sounds, as wavelengths and things like that. We've talked about light and different types of light that exist out there, things we see. UVs we don't see X-rays, we don't see gamma rays, but they do exist. And so there's a lot of energy out there that is in a different level, capacity or frequency level, that we're not even, I mean, right now we're talking something about radiation, we're talking about EMF, from the cell towers and things like that. But all these things are things that are around us, computers, like the old computers, you put a phone or something next to them and you hear like a little noise, tick, 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 meaning that there's something that traverses the actual, body of that particular device. So all that stuff is real, but people are not really listening to it. They're not seeing it. They're seeing it, but they're not really questioning it. They just know what it is. They know how to use it. It's there for a purpose, but no one is like asking, well, wow, look at this. It's beautiful. It's made. It's nice. But look at this Earth. How is it standing in the same spot, and moving around? I mean, most people don't like. There's a simple fact, right? So the solar system in itself is traveling as the light speed at a fast speed towards the star Vega, another another star, another galaxy, right? But we all actually are in constant speed right now. I mean, we actually, speed going in the speed of light right now in a vessel called Earth around another, system and flying. But because it's so massive, we don't see it rotating and it's moving constantly. We don't feel it, but it's moving. It's
Yeah,
actually a moving vehicle,
yeah,
whether on its own or around the sun, or actually as a whole, solar system. So
yeah,
there's so much we can talk about that. But here's the funny thing: we went from people and us to the secrets of the universe in less than an hour, and we probably like some people are like, "What kind of show is this?" Because I mean, this is supposed to be the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, and yes, because this is a show about mental psychology and things like that. But it all ties into all these factors. And while I'm not an expert, Gabrielle is, you know, I do interact with him in these things, and these are some subjects that I've, was always keen on, and I've always looked into. But really very intriguing and interesting stuff. Sometimes we have to ask the questions. As humans, we need to think, and we're supposed to think. And unfortunately, we don't all think in the right way. I mean, we think about things, but not necessarily about reflecting in the world. How our body functions, how the universe functions, how things all correlate to each other, how our relationships are. I mean, we're again, this is about people and us. It's really about interacting with others. How do we grow and behave and actually be, and then interact until we're out of this theater that we talked about earlier. So, any last words for this show, Gabriel?
sure. Wonderful. So they are interrelated. Just because we deny the life and the love in us, it doesn't mean that it could care any less. We are the ones who suffer because we deny, we minimize, or we blame somebody else for our life. And in the meantime, the sun goes up and down every day, whether we seek occasions to get offended or we seek occasions to find the beauty within and without us and enjoy it and love and be loving towards others.
Well, with those wonderful words, Gabriel, thank you for another crazy, interesting, intriguing show. And I mean, crazy good. Folks, thank you for watching the iHealth channel and listening on iHealth Radio. This is Hurricane H here, and we'll be talking soon in another show. And look forward to another Gabriel Gherasim hour. And that will be next week. Ciao, ciao. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you.